I lost my mind and fell in love with the man who kept me captive. But on the night his first love returned from abroad, I woke up. It turned out I was just a supporting character in a story about rekindling an old flame. To avoid a tragic fate, I resolutely decided to run away with my pregnancy. Years later, when we met again, my smug little boy was hugging the neck of a furious man. Mom, look at the boyfriend I brought you. Chapter 1. Everyone in New York knew that Charles had kept a pet canary for 3 years. That canary was absurdly obedient, never causing a fuss, and even resembled Charles's first love a bit. After 3 years by Charles's side, I found a photo in his cherished album. In the picture, Charles wore a suit, and Emily was in a dress, standing in the sunlight, looking very much like a perfect match. The woman in the photo did indeed bear some resemblance to me. This damned stand-in trope Charles had really played it to the fullest. I had always known I was just a temporary stand-in, yet I couldn't control the heartache. The memories of those 3 years replayed in my mind like a slow-motion movie. As if possessed, I typed a line in the chat box. Charles, what if I said I don't want to be a canary anymore and want to be your wife? To hide my true feelings, I even added an emoji to make it look like I was joking. I couldn't hold back and immediately retracted the message after sending it. I waited anxiously for a long time, but there was no response. I gave a bitter laugh, mocking my wishful thinking and unrealistic dreams. Me, a girl raised in an orphanage. How could I possibly become the wife of a prince of New York? Just then, Charles sent a message. I'm going to the airport to pick someone up tonight. I won't be back today. Be good at home. Who else could Charles personally pick up besides Emily? That night, the night Charles's first love returned, I awakened to my self-awareness. I realized I was a supporting character doomed to a tragic fate in a book. While the female lead was studying abroad, she met the male lead. Because I resembled the female lead, I became the male lead's obedient canary. But I, foolishly infatuated, got pregnant by accident and wanted to take the position of Mrs. Charles. I tried to sow discord between Emily and Charles, which ended up infuriating Charles. He forced me to terminate the pregnancy and forbade me from ever appearing before him and Emily again. Now that I knew the plot in advance, I was terrified. Right now, I was holding a pregnancy test report, hoping Charles would reconsider our relationship. I foolishly dreamed that Charles could let go of his longtime first love and be with me. Quickly shaking off those improper thoughts, I packed my bags swiftly and escaped into the night. As long as I ran far enough and stayed out of Charles and Emily's way, I should be safe, right? I might have a cute baby who looks like both Charles and me, and I could quietly live my life, preserving my little life as a supporting character. Chapter 2. After leaving Charles, I would occasionally see him on the advertisement screens in the shopping plazas. He and the female lead stood together, looking as perfect a match as they did in that photo I once saw. Although I liked him very much, seeing them together still made me think they were a perfect couple. A big shot like Charles should be with a lady from a prestigious family, a truly dazzling male and female lead. I was grateful I had the sense to leave back then. These past few years, I moved south and bought a small house in a little town, just enough for me and my child to live in. I was no longer alone, I had a cute son as my companion. Mom, today at kindergarten, the other kids bullied me. They said I was delusional. 5-year-old Tommy, with his chubby cheeks, had tear streaks on his adorable face as he clung to my leg, whimpering. My heart ached instantly, and I quickly scooped him up into my arms. Sweetie, who bullied my baby? It's normal for little kids in kindergarten to have some minor squabbles. I was thinking about how to comfort him when he suddenly said something surprising. Today, when the teacher was showing a cartoon, an ad popped up. I thought the man in it looked so good with Mom, so I said he was my daddy. My classmates said I was ugly and delusional. Wah! My temple throbbed, and I hurriedly wiped his tears. Don't cry, sweetie. Our little Tommy is so generous, we won't stoop to their level. After a while, Tommy fell asleep on my leg. Looking at his innocent little face, I felt too tired to struggle anymore. I paid the famous matchmaker in our neighborhood $500 to help me find a suitable man. I thought it would take some time to get a response. Unexpectedly, that very night, the matchmaker sent me a candidate. My phone buzzed with notifications. Lily, don't say Auntie doesn't look out for you. This man is the best match I have. After recommending his contact card, she sent more details. Unmarried, single, has a car and a house. And he looks like a star. Just look at how fair his skin is. Oh, and he's a university professor, with a stable job. A pretty girl like you will definitely like him. Then she sent a blurry ID photo. I couldn't see his face clearly, but judging by his conditions, I frowned. Would a man with such good qualities really be interested in a single mother like me? I carefully chose my words to reply to the matchmaker. Auntie, thank you, but could you find me someone with more average conditions? I don't think someone like this would be interested in me. Her reply came quickly. Lily, don't worry. This man is too busy with work to find a girlfriend, that's why he's relying on me. Don't worry about whether you're a good match. I think you could match him 800 times over. Since the matchmaker vouched for him, I quickly added his contact. Chapter 3. After adding him that night, I went to bed with my child. It wasn't until the next morning that I saw the man's message. Let's meet tomorrow afternoon to get to know each other. If it's a good match, we can get married. I checked the sent time, PM last night. I quickly got up and prepared myself. Whether or not he liked me, I had to be polite and meet him since Auntie had worked hard to set this up. I arrived early, an hour before the agreed time, and sat on a bench, lost in thought. I remembered how Tommy's eyes lit up when he saw me all dressed up before leaving. Mom, why are you dressing up? Are you going to find me a daddy? Yes, Mom will try to find you a daddy today. I tapped his nose with my makeup brush, and he giggled, dodging. Unconsciously smiling, I noticed a shadow fall over me. A familiar, pleasant scent of cologne filled my nose, stirring long-buried feelings. I looked up and met a pair of deep eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses. Hello, I'm Alex. Hello, Lily. Seeing the man's excellent appearance, the scent of his cologne still lingered. I extended my hand to shake his well-defined hand. Such a match would be highly sought after anywhere. Auntie must really care about me to introduce such a great man. I drank some water, composed myself, and prepared to tell him about my situation. As a matchmaker, Auntie might have hidden some of my real circumstances. I thought it was necessary to be honest before getting to know each other better. Well, Before I could finish, a cute voice interrupted from not far away. Mom! I looked over and saw Tommy proudly clinging to a furious man's neck. Mom, look at the boyfriend I brought you. For a moment, I was dumbfounded. After 5 years, Charles had become thinner and more aloof. And Tommy was nestling in his arms, acting spoiled. At that moment, the atmosphere in the restaurant turned icy. People around us started whispering and watching. Charles acted as if he didn't notice, carrying the child over to me. Lily, you've done well, disappearing for 5 years with a child this big. The pressure was overwhelming, and I almost buried my head in my chest, not daring to look at him. In the silence, I heard myself meekly apologize. I'm sorry, Mr. Alex. I apologize if Auntie didn't tell you I'm a single mother. I'm really sorry for wasting your time. The next moment, Charles grabbed me and led me outside. By the time he shoved me into the passenger seat, I was still in a daze. Tommy was placed in the back, his big eyes curiously looking at me and Charles. Suddenly, I was kissed, and under Charles's guidance, I clumsily responded. It's been so many years since I was last intimate with a man. I felt uncomfortable. The car was cramped, and every time I struggled, Charles held me down. I didn't know how long it lasted, but then Tommy pretended to cough from the back seat. Mom, Uncle, how long are you going to kiss? I'm shy, I can't look. I turned my head at his voice. My little boy was covering his eyes with chubby hands, but peeking through his fingers. Are you sure you're too shy to look? Chapter 4. Charles drove us back to my place with ease. His nearly 6'3" frame felt imposing here. Only Tommy was excitedly running circles around him. Mom, I want this daddy, okay? He's the daddy from the ad. I want to see who dares to say I'm delusional now. I quickly picked him up and covered his mouth. Sweetie, you must be hungry. Let me get you some cookies. Less talking, more eating, kid. Charles's sharp gaze immediately shifted to me. What ad? What delusion? Charles didn't even notice that Tommy had called him daddy. He was too busy interrogating me about the child's words. Tommy exaggerated the story about the ad, then dramatically hid in Charles's arms, crying. Hearing this, Charles set him on the couch and carried me into the bedroom, locking the door behind us. Kids shouldn't watch inappropriate stuff. I awkwardly struggled. Charles chuckled, his handsome face full of mischief. They can't see outside. Just don't make any noise. He silenced me, holding my hands above my head. His hot breath trailed from my neck downward. I was the first to give in, going limp. Let go. I realized my voice was embarrassingly soft. I lowered my head in shame, not daring to look at Charles. He nibbled my earlobe. What? Go to the bed? Lily. Charles always had a way of making my ordinary name sound so tender, stirring up uncontrollable desire. After the frenzy, the bedroom was a mess. I awkwardly tittied up my torn underwear. He wrapped his big hand around my waist. Why did you run? Seeing my silence, he playfully brushed his stubble against my face. Why did I run? Should I tell him I realized I was a villainess and ran to avoid a tragic end? Who would believe such absurdity? I thought of Emily and instinctively said, Emily is back. It's time for this stand-in to step aside. Hearing this, Charles inexplicably brightened up, pinching my cheek playfully. Jealous? What a joke, how could I be jealous? I was fully aware of my position now. Just leave and don't come back. Charles's grip on my waist tightened. Lily, I came to find you. I'm willing to be a stepfather. Chapter 5. I was stunned. I had spent 5 years trying not to be a disposable pawn, even seeking a stepfather for my son to stay away from Charles. But now Charles had come looking for me, saying he was willing to be a stepfather. In just a few hours, I was shocked twice. My brain felt like it was overheating. Charles's voice softened. Come home with me, will you? Even after 5 years, no matter how many times I told myself not to covet what wasn't mine, seeing Charles still made my heart flutter. I bit my lip nervously. This is my home. You and Emily are a good match. I felt reluctant and unwilling, but I was still afraid of the predetermined ending. At some point, Tommy had snuck in. Both Charles and I instinctively hid our emotions. Seeing my stubbornness, Charles started persuading Tommy. Do you want to go home with Daddy? Tommy thoughtfully rested his chin on his hand before slowly shaking his head. I just heard Daddy and Mom arguing. Daddy already has a girlfriend, so I don't want Daddy anymore. Hearing this, Charles got angry and pretended to pinch Tommy's nose. Daddy doesn't have a girlfriend. Tell Mom, I've only ever had her as a girlfriend. Tommy cautiously glanced at my expression, then shook his head again. Charles continued to lure him. Come home with Daddy. I'll buy you a house full of toys, piled as high as a mountain. I'll buy Mom a diamond ring and marry her. No one will bully you and Mom. Tommy hadn't been swayed yet, but I was the one who couldn't sit still. Charles wanted to marry me? What a joke. Maybe my gaze was too intense, as Charles also stared at me. Our families have business ties, and I've always seen her as a sister. Whatever about first loves and red marks, the only woman I've ever loved is you, Lily. When I say I want to marry you, I mean it. In the quiet atmosphere, I heard my own heartbeat. It felt like all the blood in my body was boiling in this moment. An uncontrollable thought surfaced in my mind. Since I left with Tommy, everything had been unfolding differently. My child wasn't aborted, I wasn't banned by Charles, and Emily still wasn't his wife. Could it be that the story's direction would change for a supporting character like me? Charles's eyes seemed to sparkle with stars. Tommy quietly slipped out, peeking through the door. "Mom, I still want this, Daddy." After Tommy left, I sighed. "Tommy is your child." Charles's eyes lit up, and he spun me around several times before pinching my waist. "You heartless girl, running away with my son for 5 years." I followed my heart and left the small town with Tommy and Charles. But I didn't sell the house because I feared my story's ending might still come true. I wanted to keep a backup plan. After returning, Charles hinted many times that he wanted to marry. Once a high and mighty figure, now he sweetly coaxed me in bed every day. Life was too good, and I always feared it would shatter like a bubble. So I kept finding excuses to delay the wedding. Plans couldn't keep up with changes. Unexpectedly, just as I was about to decide to marry Charles, his mother came to see me. In the villa where I had been Charles's canary for 3 years, his mother sat elegantly on the sofa, wearing expensive clothes and jewelry worth millions. She looked at me with disdain. "I raised Charles to be the best. Everything associated with him should be the best, not some lowly trash. Don't you think so, Lily?" I clenched my hands, trembling slightly. "Ma'am, you're right, but I thought the best doesn't always mean the most suitable." Since I convinced myself to return to Charles, I wouldn't back down easily. Unless I couldn't escape my doomed fate, I would accept it. Charles's mother scanned me from head to toe with sharp eyes, then sneered. "After eating delicacies, sometimes you crave junk food. Miss Lily, I hope you know your place." After she left, I sat on the sofa for a long time to calm down. Back then, I was just Charles's canary, a plaything, so they didn't say much. But now Charles had personally brought me back, and things were different. Charles returned with Tommy, and they both ran to me. Tommy snuggled into my arms, shouting at Charles, "Mom is mine." Charles didn't hesitate, lifting him by the collar and setting him on the sofa. He leaned close to me, his eyes dimming. "Who bullied you? Why do you look unhappy?" I shook my head, not wanting to tell him about his mother's visit. Complaining before even entering the family would only make things difficult for Charles and make his mother hate me more. Charles stroked my cheek. "I'll be away for a few days next week. Take care of our son at home." For some reason, his words filled me with inexplicable anxiety. Chapter 6. On Monday, I woke up to find Charles gone, only Tommy sleeping soundly beside me. Having Charles with me these days, his sudden departure made me feel uneasy. Quickly adjusting my mood, I took my child to school. The homeroom teacher scrutinized me, making me uncomfortable. I awkwardly looked around and cautiously asked, "Is there something you want to tell me, teacher?" The young female teacher gave me a disdainful look. Parents are their children's first teachers, playing a crucial role in their education. I nodded quickly. "You're right, teacher." I thought she might have some opinions about our family's education, but her next words shocked me. Taking my child's bag, she continued with a sarcastic tone. "Like parent, like child. If the parent acts like a vixen, the child will learn bad behavior." Her words hinted at resentment. I quickly stopped her. "What do you mean by that? Emily and Charles grew up together. Don't you think it's inappropriate for you to come between them?" I was stunned. That's Emily's one-sided wish. This teacher seemed close to Emily, but I didn't want to delve into it any further, lest her disapproval of me affect my child. Before I left, the young, pretty teacher shot me another disdainful glance. "You're just a plaything. You'll be out soon enough." Even someone with my good temper couldn't take her snide remarks any longer. I retorted, "Don't worry about it. When I marry my child's father, I'll be sure to send you an invitation." Despite my comeback, a sense of unease settled over me as I left the kindergarten. Charles's feelings for me couldn't possibly be fake. Otherwise, why would he come looking for me, willing to raise a child he didn't even know was his? The Charles I remembered wasn't someone who'd be taken for a fool. I glanced at my phone to check the time, and among the myriad notifications, one headline caught my eye. Zhang family heiress confirms engagement. Zhang and Gu family's alliance set in stone. In an instant, my blood ran cold. I knew it couldn't be true. It had to be a media stunt to grab attention. But then again, no media outlet in New York would dare fabricate stories about the Gu family. Driven by curiosity, I couldn't resist clicking on the article. It was a clipped video from an interview, showing Emily in an elegant dress, exuding grace and poise. "Is there something special today, Miss Emily? You seem very happy." "Yes, indeed. Today is the engagement day of the Zhang and Gu families." I turned off my phone and hurried back to the villa. "Next week, I'll be away on a business trip for a few days." Charles's words echoed in my mind. Could this business trip be the engagement with Emily? As the head of the Gu family, there were few matters that required his personal attention. Could it be that, despite my efforts, the plot was still moving inexorably towards the original storyline? I sent Charles a message. "Are you busy?" This felt eerily similar to 5 years ago when I left. I had sent a wishful message back then, only to retract it in shame. But now, having decided to give my heart to him, I wanted a response from Charles. Minutes turned into hours, and still, my messages remained unanswered. Chapter 7. That night, I still hadn't received a reply from Charles. The next morning, I awoke to sounds from the living room. Without my permission, the housekeeper wouldn't be cleaning or cooking this early. A surge of hope rose within me, and I quickly put on my slippers and went downstairs. As I rounded the corner, I saw Emily casually eating breakfast in the living room, seemingly self-prepared. Charles and Emily, were they really that close? Suppressing my discomfort, I descended the stairs. Emily noticed me and greeted me first. "You must be Charles's girlfriend?" I nodded, feeling inexplicably awkward. She extended a slender hand. "Nice to meet you, Charles's girlfriend. I'm his fiancée." My mind went blank, and I stared at her wide-eyed. "What did you say? I don't believe you missed yesterday's trending news. My family and the Gu family are engaged." Emily, with the air of a hostess, looked at me and smiled magnanimously. "Don't worry. You've been with Charles for so long. Even if you have to leave, we'll compensate you." Fiancée. So she was here to assert her dominance. The realization felt like a crack in my heart, letting in a chilling wind. I swallowed my bitterness. I need to hear it from Charles himself. Seeing my persistence, Emily calmly handed me her phone, showing another interview video. "Watch this, and you'll believe." Charles's face appeared on screen. Reporters crowded around, pushing their microphones forward but not daring to get too close. His lips moved. "Yes, the Gu and Zhang families are engaged." A reporter asked. "What about the woman rumored to be your longtime companion? What does she mean to you?" Charles's expression darkened. "She has nothing to do with this." My vision blurred and warm tears fell onto my hands. Liar. Charles was a liar. This had nothing to do with me because I was always just a dispensable supporting character. "I understand, Miss Emily. I'll leave soon. I wish you both happiness." That afternoon, I quickly packed my bags and picked up Tommy from kindergarten. The day felt eerily similar to 5 years ago. It seemed fate's trajectory would never easily change. As I held Tommy's hand at the airport, I felt guilty. "Tommy, Daddy has another lady now, so Mom is taking you away. Will you be mad at me?" Tommy snuggled into my arms, rubbing his head against me. "Mom, I'll go wherever you go. If Daddy has another lady, then I don't want Daddy anymore." Chapter 8. As the time approached, I led Tommy through the crowd. Just as it was our turn, a strong force pulled me back, and I stumbled into a broad chest. The person embraced me and Tommy tightly, refusing to let go. People in line moved around us, continuing forward. Tears welled up in my eyes. "You jerk, let go!" I didn't understand why Charles was here. Wasn't he busy with his engagement to Emily? Do you still want a harem in this day and age? My words were laced with sarcasm. Charles's face showed a hint of grievance before he peppered my eyes, cheeks, and lips with hot kisses. Lily, can't you trust me just once? What was I supposed to trust? I glared at him. Trust what? That you want to be with me, want to marry me, while secretly getting engaged to Emily. I held Tommy close. I'm telling you, I don't like you anymore, you scumbag. Tommy broke free, pounding Charles's leg. Scumbag. Let go of my mom. Mom doesn't like you anymore, and neither do I. A small crowd started to gather, watching us. Charles carried me out, holding Tommy with one arm. By the time he let me go, we were in the parking lot. I was fuming. What do you want? To keep a mistress while flying a flag at home? Charles seemed to laugh in exasperation, pressing me against the wall with a punishing kiss. I left for 2 days to prepare a proposal, and you, after hearing a few rumors, decide to leave, taking my son with you. Lily, you've grown bold, haven't you? His low growl made me shiver. What? Proposal? Who are you proposing to? I asked, bewildered. Charles's beautiful eyes softened. Who do you think? My future Mrs. Gu. But Emily said, and you believe her? Are you marrying her or me? Somehow, my eyes filled with tears. Charles fell silent, pulling me into his arms and speaking gently. Thank goodness the housekeeper called to tell me Emily was there and you were leaving. Otherwise, I don't know how long it would have taken to find you. The Gu and Zhang families have many business dealings, but Emily and I will never be possible. I wanted to surprise you with a proposal, but it seems surprises aren't my thing. I almost lost you again. I laughed through my tears and hugged him back. Let's go home and get married. Okay. But what happened to you two in the end? We got together. We're very happy. Then why are you alone now? In the small southern town, I lay on a rocking chair, enjoying the breeze. The neighbor's younger sister, a novelist, was asking about my past. She liked chatting with people to gather inspiration. Honestly, I don't remember much. Only the shadow of a once beloved figure remains in my mind. Beautiful love stories always end happily. But not all stories have perfect endings. I kept the other part of the story to myself. After returning, Charles and I did get married. Once his mother knew we had a 5-year-old son, she no longer opposed us. The Gu family reluctantly accepted me. Even Emily faced repercussions for her previous schemes with his mother to drive me away. Up to this point, it seemed like a happily ever after, right? Chapter 9. Charles gave me a grand wedding. The venue was decorated with my favorite roses. There weren't many guests, only those who truly cared for Charles and me. It was a sunny day, and Tommy wore a mini version of Charles's suit, walking down the long aisle with a flower basket. Under the officiant's guidance, Charles and I exchanged rings. We kissed passionately amidst cheers, as if making up for lost time. But just as the ceremony was about to complete, Charles suddenly coughed up blood, spraying it onto my pristine white dress, the vivid red standing out starkly. He collapsed into my arms without warning. In the VIP hospital room, I stayed by Charles's side for a long time, but he didn't wake up. I remembered the night Emily returned, the night I awakened to my fate. Emily appeared then. She wasn't her usual haughty self, her eyes were filled with tears. Lily, I know you love Charles. I love him too. I'm the main character of this story. If the male lead deviates and falls for a supporting character, do you think the world will continue smoothly? Emily's words brought me back to reality. I no longer dared to covet what wasn't mine. I had no choice but to leave Charles. The Gu family refused to let go of Tommy, their blood relative. After a great struggle, I left one silent night. I traveled far and wide before returning to this southern town to live. This is the 10th year since I left Charles. I never tried to learn about him, only keeping in touch with Tommy. My child, born against the storyline, was free from its constraints. But I dared not get close, fearing the plot's power would harm my loved ones. At the end of the year, I quietly returned to that city. Tommy had grown into a handsome young man. He walked alongside Charles, holding a beautiful Samoyed, father and son looking picturesque. I stood at a distance, not daring to approach. When Charles went inside first, Tommy turned towards me with the dog. I was about to run when the white dog bit my pants. Mom. In that moment, I burst into tears, falling into my son's arms. Is Daddy okay? Except for not remembering you, he's fine. Is Daddy happy? Alone, only I keep him company. Daddy doesn't like Auntie Emily, they never married. I don't want to know. I mumbled, but caught sight of a familiar figure reflected in the window. I sighed inwardly. This is the best ending.